Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Game Changers, where we talk to some of the most influential personalities in sports and fantasy sports and learn about their journeys to get to the pinnacle of where they are. My name is Dan Harris. You can find me on Twitter at DanHarris80. Before we get into the podcast, I want to remind everybody that we are running a contest where we're giving away a signed Davante Adams Packers helmet. All you need to do to be entered into the contest is leave a review for the show on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. Send a screenshot of that review to GameChangers@FantasyPros.com. That gets you entered into the contest. And you also give us a review where a new podcast helps us get off the ground. Well, I'm really excited for today's guest, who I can only assume is my distant relative, and that is Chris Harris of Harris Football. You can find him on Twitter at Harris Football. Chris, how you doing?
I'm okay, Dan. I feel like we're having a little family reunion here.
It's great. Well, I'll be honest. I'm pretty sure that every member of my family would trade me in for you. And there are two reasons. I'm going to be honest with you. There are two reasons. The first is that it was a couple of weeks ago at this point, but my wife was reading something and she was kind of, I don't know, she looked all serious. And I was like, are you okay? She's like, yeah, I'm reading this book. It's really good. I'm like, oh, that's nice. What's it about? And she's like, well, it's basically kind of about the apocalypse. And I was like, I don't really think that's a good thing to be reading right now, considering we're kind of living through it. And I was like, oh, what's it called? And she said, Tulsa. And I looked at the cover and it was written by Christopher Harris. I'll be honest, I knew you were a writer. I did not know that was a book you had written, but you had, and I told my wife that you were going to be on, and she is quite excited. Nice. And the second thing is that my son is, I live in New Hampshire. I am from New York. I am a Jets fan. My son, because I am not a sadist, is a Patriots fan, and he begs for me to have on only people who either root for the Red Sox or the Patriots or things like that. So they're pretty much looking to trade up at this point for the quote-unquote better Harris. So
where in New Hampshire are you? I don't think we talked about that.
Oh, no, we didn't. I'm in a small town called Bedford, right underneath Manchester, so southern New Hampshire.
So I have a place in Amherst, Mass. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
You do, but you're not there now, right? You're out
I'm
in
not.
California.
I'm in Los Angeles. I'm aboard the yacht. People who are listening to this because they listen to my show will understand the reference, and everyone else will be like, wow, that guy has a yacht? And yes, I have a yacht.
All right. Well, from your yacht, then, why don't we get started with how you basically get into this? I assume, because I know you have a lot of interests and you're a writer, as we just mentioned, that you did not sort of graduate from high school or graduate from college expecting that you were going to be covering football in any capacity, let alone fantasy sports, right?
Yeah, definitely not. I definitely played, but no.
Did you play football?
I played a little in high school. I didn't make it all the way through high school play. I sort of pick a sport. I picked tennis. I played a little bit.
I played tennis too.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
I mean, look at us. We really are somehow related.
That's right. Cousins. Tennis cousins. No, I mean, you know, I'm older than you are, and when I was graduating, anything, that wasn't really a thing. That wasn't really an option to be covering fantasy sports. I don't think, I mean, there wasn't an internet, right? So it would have been tough. But, you know, there were those magazines, so I guess someone was covering them. But no, the not so succinct answer is this is a happy accident, this career path.
And you didn't, like, not covering football generally, right? You weren't looking to be a journalist or anything like that. Were you going to be a writer? Is that what the plan was coming out of high school and or college?
I wish I had the courage of my conviction. So I wanted to be a fiction writer for as long as I was a little, 13 years old is probably when I wanted to be a fiction writer. And whereas most people go through high school and then college and their 20s and they say, well, this is the time for me to experiment. This is the time for me to not make a lot of money and just, see if I can do it. I did the exact opposite. I decided it wasn't practical to do those things, so I didn't major in anything. I majored in economics. I got an MBA. I spent my 20s waking up really, really early in the morning, writing fiction, and then going to work. Just like I look back and I go, why? Why didn't you just, why? Yeah. But yeah, so eventually, finally, I came to my senses. I went back to grad school after, 6 or 7 years after getting an MBA, I worked toward getting an MFA in creative writing and sort of quit my MBA-ish career, and that's when I'm more fully committed to being a writer.
And what was that career, by the way?
I mean, it was a bunch of things. It was sort of dot-com-y startups. It was, I was a creative director for a small ad agency. I was like, my last job was like sort of number 3 at music-y internet kind of thing that I've joked, I've said in other podcasts, like it probably should have been Spotify, and then we wouldn't be having to have a talk about money, but the wrong person was running it and it died, and I'd had enough.
Okay. So you go, and did you get your MFA then?
I did get my MFA. I mean, you can't see me right now, but people who are watching us on YouTube can tell that I clearly have the style of a writer because of the sideburns that I'm rocking that I don't normally rock. I mean, they were mutton chops and I carved them down. They're still not. I apologize, world, for what they look like, but
I mean, again, you're not seeing me right now, as we've talked about on air. My whole strategy is just to randomly cut pieces of hair that look like they're growing out of place. So I look like I've been attacked by wolves. So you're good, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, it just is it's sort of I have to have one writerly affectation at all times, and right now it's like it was mutton chops and now it's sideburns.
Okay, I mean that'll work. Okay, so you got your MFA and you're a fiction writer. Is that what's going on?
So I finished the MFA program. It was at UMass. That's why I was in Amherst. We talked about how I have a place in Amherst, Mass. And all I really knew was I didn't want to get a real job. I didn't want to go. If I could avoid it, I wanted to avoid going back to the MBA track. But you really can't get a job with an MFA and no publication. You got to go do something else. You got to wait tables. I mean, by this time I'm in my 30s and I'm not going to wait tables anymore. Right. And
yep.
I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And, I liked fantasy. I had done some sports writing for a gambling website from a guy named Brian who lived in Canada, who I found, and we were chatting and stuff, and I started writing about NASCAR for him while I was in grad school the second time, and had gotten positive feedback on very small, writing is what I did and do, so the quality of the writing was never going to be the problem, but the execution of covering the sport, I didn't know anything about NASCAR. I did my best, but I thought as I was finishing up in that last semester, hey, maybe I could try to do something else, and would go to talentedmrroto.com, Matthew Berry's site. They had a contest, be the next great writer for Talented Mr. Roto, and if you win the contest, then you'll get to write for us. And I don't think they were paying us anything, but it was all nascent days. This was all there was certainly content at ESPN and other places, Yahoo for fantasy, but it hadn't really blown out yet. And so I won that contest, and the reward was write for us. So I did. And I think I very briefly maybe even did some editing for them as well. And then, who's thinking of that as a career, right? Maybe, I guess in my mind, what I'm thinking is let's freelance. Maybe I could cobble together enough where I could do freelance writing. I've never really had the goal of going into locker rooms or talking to athletes. If people know my shtick, it's kind of the opposite of that. I can't stand it. So I don't know. I didn't have that much of a plan, to be honest. I had a mortgage, but I didn't have a plan. And then Yahoo came calling, and Brandon Funston at Yahoo offered me a paying job to do it, for not freelance, under contract. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, sure, that's great. And then I don't even know, 6 months, 9 months later, Matthew went to ESPN, and he said, hey, if you can get out of your thing with with Yahoo, then come to ESPN. And I said, we'll give you more money. We'll put you on TV. And I was like, sure, that sounds good. And honestly, to Brandon Funston's eternal credit, he was like, it's too good of an opportunity. You have to take it. I'll let you out of your contract, which, not all people do business that way. Yeah. It's why Brandon's a great guy and one of my best friends in the business.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, it's a pretty straightforward story to this point, but it's awesome. I mean, the fact that that's really... that you win a contest legitimately to be able to contribute, and that turns into sort of freelance work, or then you get a contract with Yahoo, and then quickly you said 6 to 9 months. I mean that's like that's ludicrous speed at at the stage to go over. Then you're all of a sudden working at ESPN. So now this is more than whatever, we'll see. This is paying my mortgage. This is kind of your career now, right? I mean, this is basically all you're focusing on. Are you writing out of curiosity at this point? Like doing any fiction writing in the morning or anything?
You mean then or now?
Then.
I was still, yeah. So, I mean, even in the 10 plus years that it's been since, the publishing world has changed so much. At that point, it still seemed possible that you could make a living as a fiction writer. That really isn't possible anymore, unless you're, just one of a few. You're Stephen King, right? Other than that, you're pretty much hosed. But at the time, it still seemed like it was possible. So, to be honest, all of these jobs that I'd had in my 20s had felt like kind of prostitution. I mean, kind of like I was whoring myself out a little bit in order to find time to write to what I don't know why I couldn't just make myself quit and write, but people do funny things, and we all have the Calvinist work ethic, or we don't, or whatever. I don't know what it is, but by the time I then had spent years just writing and getting a lot better, and anything that I wrote in my 20s I've now thrown away. It was terrible, but you have to kind of you have to go through bad writing to get to good. And by that point, I was like, listen, if I was gonna prostitute myself in those other jobs, this is a much funner way to do it. I mean, I actually enjoy this. Those other jobs, meh. Like they were fine, but I didn't like them as much as I liked working for ESPN. So it was still a deal with myself, I guess, is the way I would answer the question. It was still like, no, but you have to make sure you write. And when I started ESPN, it wasn't just to do football. It was to do everything. All of us were going to do everything. There were just a few of us. And it was going to be like, I was going to do baseball in baseball season, football in football season, NASCAR. I was part of the original cast of NASCAR Now on TV, the fantasy guy on NASCAR Now, because somebody heard that I had written NASCAR.
Right. Did you know baseball, by the way, or was it just you were just like, well, I'm going to be here and I'll cover everything? Are you like a baseball fan too? Or
I was more of a baseball fan then. The moment I stopped covering baseball for fantasy, this is the moment I stopped watching baseball, to be honest.
Okay.
Fantasy baseball was my first love of fantasy sports in high school. That was what got me in. Football wasn't nearly as engrossing. But yeah, I have changed with the times. Baseball is just too slow for me now. I can't make myself watch it. So anyway, I made the deal with myself and said, yes, I'm going to continue to write in the mornings, so also mostly worked remote. I never moved to, I was there 8 years at ESPN. I never moved to Bristol. So I still lived in Amherst, and I would drive down whenever they needed me for media, which means TV, because you could do everything else from home. And I'd usually, as things progressed and I focused more on football, it would be come down 2 days a week, in season every week, do the car wash, do all the shows, whatever. And then the rest of the time, it's a ton of work. And honestly, in the football season is the time when I do the least fiction writing, and always have since I've taken these jobs. But the deal always was with myself, no, I'm going to keep writing too. And fortunately, what I've written has actually been pretty well received.
Yeah.
So,
according to my wife, it's fantastic. So you've got at least one fan. So how then, 8 years you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
At ESPN. How do we go then from ESPN to going out on your own and doing Harris football?
So I just think I maybe outgrew it a little bit, or I don't know. I would never, this is sort of an industry podcast, and I'm telling the truth, but I don't have like vicious, nasty, mean stories about ESPN. I really don't.
All right, podcast over. That's
I know.
It. That's the only reason why no, go ahead. Of course. I mean, I understand.
Right, like here and there, did things happen and I just throw up my hands and go, what the hell? Yes, definitely. And by the end, those things had outweighed the fun. And to be honest, the last year that I was there, I probably shouldn't have been there. The last year I was there, I was actually kind of unhappy, which is stupid. And, even at the time, I would beat myself up and say, you realize how many millions of people think you'd be an idiot for saying you're unhappy for having this job, which is the reason I re-upped when I probably, and in the end, there are buckets that need to get filled. And I'm a workhorse writer. I don't even write anymore, but at the time, I write fast and it comes out pretty clean, and so they could get a lot out of me, and I was happy to do it. But it was the same piece every year, same pieces every year, and the same limitations every year. Where, we had a weird thing, which maybe they still have at ESPN, where, I wanted to break down film. That's kind of what my thing is. It's how I've done analysis really from almost the very, very beginning at ESPN, is actually watching all the games. And we were just told, like, the fantasy group itself, super supportive. really the problem was never with the fantasy group. It was everything outside the fantasy group where we were just told, sorry, you can't show very much film on ESPN.com. And we had to fight. And my editor eventually fought for we got 20 seconds. Of the X number of seconds that are allotted to ESPN.com, we'll give fantasy 20 of them. Harris can show some film, show LaShawn McCoy running, and talk about it, and we'll put it on digital video and put it up on ESPN.com. Yay. And for a little while that was enough, but at some point it just got frustrating.
Yeah.
And again, nobody in the fantasy group's fault, really. Everybody understood what the limitations were, but to some degree, it felt like I was going to be doing the exact same gig forever.
So when you leave, are you like, boom, I've got this. I'm going to go start my own thing. Everybody's going to, not other people, but my fans, people who have grown. Because you had grown. We didn't talk about this, but you had started podcasting while you were with ESPN as well, right? I remember, yes. Back.
I mean, that's another
couple, I think.
Yeah, one. I mean, it's called the Fantasy Underground, and it's much loved, and people still talk about it all the time. It was just, we were told, it's so stupid, but we were told, sorry, there's not enough resources to do more than 1 or 2 episodes a week. We just don't have enough resources to make a podcast. The truth of this, and again, this doesn't reflect on anybody in the fantasy group. It's someone else determining this, and it sounds like I'm trying to make nice to the fantasy group. Screw those guys. I think they understood the potential of that show, even though we never really got shown numbers, but if they had just said, sure, do a 5-show-a-week podcast and here's some digital video to work on and grow in that area, we see room that you can grow, I wouldn't have ever known any of the rest of this was possible. I'd have been happy. I'd have continued on along at the way I was. I'd probably still be there. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they have no regrets either. They've grown. They're happy, but I certainly have no regrets.
No, sure. Of course. So you decide to leave, and do you have Harris football, mapped out?
No.
This is what I'm going to do. This is it. I've got it all planned out.
Oh
now.
my God. So much no that your head would literally pop off your shoulders. No, not at all. So it's never really quitting. It's always it's a talent contract. So my contract was up, and so I wasn't, so I just didn't, they offered and I didn't say yes. Which is kind of like quitting, but not, it's not like you're walking out on a contract.
I get it.
And I did it. And then I went, what do I do now? So the truth is that if my contract had been, there was a point where it was multiple years, but by the end, those last couple of years, it was 1 year at a time. And if the 1 year had been up in February, I honestly don't know what I would have done. I honestly am not sure I would have started this because my contract was up in end of July, early August. I had the whole 2015 season already I'd written, for the last 4 or 5 years at ESPN, they still had a print magazine that they put on the newsstand. I wrote the whole thing. I wrote every player profile.
Wow.
So I'd already done all that over the course of the winter and spring, already done the ranking summit, already done tons of content for the season up through the end of July, as you can imagine. So it was all kind of right there. I had opinions. I'd never really had a daily podcast. Why don't I try that? And I did. I mean, to the extent to which I did not have a plan is baffling to me now, 5 years later. It is crazy. I didn't know how to record one. I didn't know how to store one, get it served, get it on iTunes. I didn't know how to get ads. I didn't know what right software to use. I didn't know what the format should be. I had absolutely no idea.
Wow. So were you shocked at how successful you were then and how you put it all together? Because, obviously when you look at your site and you listen to your podcast, you see your videos, I'm pretty shocked, I'll just say that, to basically be like, oh yeah, no idea what we were doing when I started, no idea that was going to be this.
Yeah, and there was no we, it was just me.
Right.
I mean, so shocked. So the story that I've told a couple times is ooh, my hair... had a little video moment there where I messed up my hair. Right. Can't have that on video. That is just not cool. We're going to cut that out. Everybody, we're going to cut that out.
Yeah, right. Well, if that were true, then I wouldn't be allowed on video whatsoever. So you're okay.
The extent to which I didn't have a clue is manifested by what my expectations were. I thought I'll just get through the season. It'll be a lark. It'll be fun. And most likely in January, it will have flopped. It will have, not whatever. Like 2015 is really different in podcasting world than 2020. Like my mom wasn't listening to podcasts yet. Right. There were podcasts, but they weren't super, super big business quite yet. And it was the second case of my time in this weird business that we're in, where I just had really good timing. I came out of MFA school right at the perfect moment where fantasy sports was going to go boom. And now I started my own podcast. Maybe if I'd left the year earlier, I've sometimes thought that, that was really even more ground floor, but still coming out in 2015 and doing it just was perfect timing. But I didn't know that. So I figured that I would do the season and I'd get to November 20th and 800 people would be listening and it wouldn't be enough, but I'd be bummed out because I'd still have to do another 6 weeks of shows, even though I knew it was sort of a dead stick. And then January, I'd go get a job, like being an NBA person, I guess. I don't know what the plan was. And instead within, 4 or 5 days, it was like, what? I couldn't believe it.
So right off the bat, people just came with you basically.
I hear a lot. It's, people have different stories of loving the show that I do now so much that, it's just, I go on all these shows and to talk about, I can't express the gratitude enough. Like, I wouldn't really want to do this. I don't care enough about football to do this if I didn't have people who were so just fun and amazing and into the show. It is absolutely an incredibly engaged audience. And I hear from a lot of them, like, I remember you on the Underground, and then there was no more Underground, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to find you. And I didn't follow you on social media, so I just forgot about you. And then someone told me about your show.
Right.
I don't know. I'm sure different people who came to the Harris Football Show early have different kind of discovery stories of where I went. Because if you didn't follow me on social media, it was, I didn't have your email. I couldn't tell you, So, I had no expectation that the thing would go pop like it did. It went crazy.
So my last question, because I think people who are listening to this, a lot of them want to work now in the fantasy sports industry, so they like hearing other people's stories of how they did it. You have this incredibly, incredibly successful and well done independent thing that you just started all on your own. Do you think that you could have done that had you not basically built an audience with the 8 years that you were at ESPN? If 8 years earlier, or put it in the same time frame, whatever the optimal timeline was.
No,
could you have said,
I get it.
I like doing this. I'm going to start my own podcast and learn where to store it and do everything like that? Or do you think it required, in your particular story, to have worked at ESPN and built your audience that way?
It's a question I can't answer, honestly. Like, it would be really easy for me to just go, no, it's really about me pissing excellence. It's just about, just me being so good that people can't not find me. But the truth is, I don't know. I that last year that I was at ESPN, I wasn't all that happy. And there was my girlfriend at the time was like, all right, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. And she said, well, what if you stay in this world? Are there other jobs? And I'm like, well, there are, but ESPN is kind of if you're going to go work for a big company, that's the one you want to work for. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if that's true, because now there are lots of other big companies that do it and do it fine. But at the time, that's how I felt. And
sure.
So one thing that they gave me to do was, we called them the bookshelf videos, where I would just talk about a player for a minute in front of a bookshelf in my house in Massachusetts, and then I would send them all over, and they would link to them in the game. So if you owned Calvin Johnson, a little video icon would pop up next to him, and anybody who owned Calvin Johnson would pop up in that video, be me in front of the bookshelf spouting for a minute, which I got to imagine high quality content. And my girlfriend at the time, not my girlfriend any longer, a long time ago, said, why don't you say your Twitter handle at the end of it? And it was at @CHarrisESPN. So I just said, follow me at Harris. And though, I'm never going to be told how many times those videos are viewed, but it has to be millions and millions and millions.
Sure.
So I doubled my Twitter following in that one season. And I have to, how could I ever say that it wasn't a huge leg up? Of course it was. also, the timing was great. There just weren't as many shows. Not as many people knew that it was a possibility. I didn't know it was a possibility. I didn't know what you charge for an ad. I didn't know how to get ads. I didn't know anything.
Right.
So I think the answer is maybe. The answer is maybe. I think it's harder now than it was 5 years ago. It almost has to be, right? It almost has to be, because it's such a saturated marketplace. If I can undo the self-deprecation that is stamped on in my DNA for a second, I think I'm fun to listen to, whatever. I think I can be funny sometimes. But I also think not very many people were approaching fantasy football the way I was approaching it at the time, which was film. So maybe the lesson there is, I don't know if there are new niches available, but I don't think recreating someone else's thing right now would be a way that you would have a path to riches and glory. I think it would be to find out, as much as you can, figure out another way to talk about it. And I mean, we've had the metrics boom, right? Yep. And we have plenty of people who do film too. I don't know what that thing is, because if I knew, I guess I'd be doing it. But it strikes me that maybe the fact that I had a thing that people hadn't heard as much, at the time, 2015, let's face it, you remember what fantasy football podcasts were mostly like. There are exceptions. Mm-hmm. I didn't listen to a ton of them, but it was mostly grab ass.
Yep.
And there's still lots of successful big podcasts that's what people want. They just want grab ass. And I'm not going to give them that much grab ass. I'm kind of intense, and I'm going to tell you specifically what I saw, and I'm going to kind of shoot down what I consider to be lazy analysis. And there are some people who that completely... I got called uppity on Twitter a couple of days ago. That was interesting. People looking at my picture. That is not... that's weird. Let's just say it was a weird experience. That's not for everybody. What I'm describing isn't for everybody, but maybe... it was for enough people, and if the people listening and watching can figure out the thing that they do that's different, that might help.
Yeah, well, that's good advice. And look, your story is great. I mean, I knew some of it, but to hear you tell it, it's really interesting. And thanks. I think if we went back 20 or 25 years and said, this is where you're going to end up and what you're going to be doing with your life, you would have probably laughed at it. But
I'm still laughing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I'd say it on my show every time I do a show, like this stupid thing that I do. It's insane. And 25 years ago, I've been like, what's a podcast?
Right. Well, between you talking about prostituting yourself and pissing excellence, I think it's been a fantastic recap of your journey. So before we go, yes. We like to end on this show on a little something called the Blitz, where I just ask you 10 kind of random questions that are kind of designed for you.
Okay.
And that's how I like to properly assess our guests, essentially, and how much I enjoyed them coming on the show. I'm the final arbiter of whether your answer is correct. You'll see that some of these might be subjective.
Too bad.
But I'm gonna get to determine, because I'm the taller Harris. How
tall are you?
I'm 6'5".
Well, you are the taller Harris.
I am the taller Harris.
You just assumed. You just assumed. I gotta be the taller Harris.
It's fair. Well, I'm sure you're the stronger and smarter and all the other stuff, Harris. But I will take taller.
I'm 6 feet even, man. You got me.
All right. Well, I've got you dwarfed then, man. It's all me. Okay. So, all right. Ready? Here we go. Let's get started with the Blitz. If you and I teamed up to form a rock band, and then we added Bob Harris from footballdiehards.com, what would our name be for our band? It's putting you on the spot. You can think about it.
I know. It's really put me on the spot. I could probably...
I know. I feel like if I come in strong with the first one to really make you be like, man, I don't have a name, that's going to sort of set the tone.
Oh, good.
For me to exert my dominance.
This is going to be a fun segment then if I'm not going to have answers for any of them. How about...
No, you'll have answers for some.
How about harassment?
That is actually that's a correct answer. That is well done. I was legitimately worried about that one because I was like, man, to have to think of one right off the bat, that's actually a legitimately good name. So I'm very impressed. That is a correct answer. If you were stuck on a desert island and you could bring an iPod with unlimited battery life, but it only had room for 3 songs on it, what would those 3 songs be? If you want, you can choose albums. I will amend the question if you have like favorite albums. Well, what would your 3 songs and or albums be?
I mean, I think they would all be jock jams.
Okay. All right. Do you have any specific ones, or you just want to go with jock jumps? Because I could totally see you like jogging around the entire desert island, rocking to it.
I may not have.
All right.
That may not have been
That's
a
it.
serious answer, but it was for
can do
comedy.
it.
It was for comedy.
You could do it. I got it. Comedy, it's fine. I'm going to mark it correct. Well done. All right. You're a writer, so I assume you know this, or you were a writer, whatever. How many suicides appear in William Shakespeare's 38 plays?
Oh, I was adding them up just the other day.
Yeah, I assumed.
I'm going to say 2.
Ooh, 13. 13 is the answer.
I just thought it was a trick question. Maybe just Romeo and Juliet.
It.
Yeah.
I knew you knew it. That's all right. If you could trade places with one living figure for just one day, who do you think you would choose and why?
I'm terrible at these questions. I get asked these kinds of questions all the time, like, what would be your dream foursome in a golf? Like, I don't think about these things at all.
There's no one person out there who you would be like, man,
no,
this would be cool to be like that guy.
It would be fine to, I don't know. Who do I want to be?
Do you want to pass, Chris?
Sure, I'll pass.
You want to come back to it or take a wrong answer? It's up to you.
I truly don't how about like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what guitar players I really like. And the truth is,
okay.
I'm not a really guitar. I'm gonna play guitar some. I'm not great myself. People who watch the YouTube channel, my own YouTube channel, know that I'm not great. But I also don't love like Eddie Van Halen. Like that's not my thing. Like I'm not really.
Do you want me to expand it to living
hero.
or dead? Do you want me to expand it to living or dead?
No,
like you could be somebody.
I just don't think about. I wish I was that other person. Is that something you think about?
No, but I'm just.
I'm really asking. Is that I'm interviewing you now, Dan?
Oh, all right. We're switching the Harris roles.
Well, I'm wondering, like, do you ever, does it occur to you, I wish I was that person?
No. I mean, I'll be honest.
Me neither.
I don't sit there and think about it. But if I had to name a human being off the top of my head, I don't know. I'd come up with something crazy.
I'm hearing you. I'm not
you
hearing
want me to choose one for you.
I'm just not hearing a lot of names. You'd come up with someone.
All right. If you want me to choose someone, I would be Ryan Gosling. Because I'd want to be adored by pretty much the entire female population of the country. I'll take that. I mean, I look like him anyway if I took my shirt off right now.
Yeah,
but,
it's tough.
You know,
it's tough being that handsome. I'll be Don DeLillo.
Okay.
Great novelist.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to mark that correct.
Okay.
Because you gave it a lot of thought, and that's actually one of the secret things I like
when I
ask these.
You're not seeing it, but the people are going to laugh at what I'm showing.
Okay. All right. Here's more of a trivia question then for you. So there is a right or wrong answer.
Okay.
Among undrafted players, okay, who had the most regular season defensive touchdowns in the 2010s? Yeah, it's like Shakespeare's plays, suicide. Man.
Do you not want people to get these right? Is that the deal?
Yeah, Nobody has gotten one right yet. If they were easy, everyone would do it.
How about what's his name? Was Richard Sherman drafted? I guess he probably was. Trying to think of a DB. Who was the other dude in the Legion of Boom? Am I close?
No.
All right.
It's all right. I'm just going to tell you because I don't think you're going to get it right. No. It's Chris Harris.
Oh,
that's you like that sneaky tie-in right there.
Well, now I'm starting to get it. Now I get a theme. All right, so now bring it on.
All right, what's one piece of advice? One piece of advice you wish you could give to your 18-year-old self?
Major in English. Just do it. Why are you being so practical? You're 18, you dummy. I just had a weird thing that didn't want to be happy. I don't know. No, I just did a weird thing in me that said it wasn't responsible. That's not, you don't be a starving artist. You figure out. I don't know. Like if I ever told my mom, I don't know if my mom listens to this. If I ever told my parents that that's like something I got out of my childhood, I think they'd be devastated. I don't think they would think they told me that at all. But yeah, what are you doing? What I wouldn't be able to run this business if I didn't have an MBA. There's a lot of good things that came out. I have a lot of friends that I met in business school and having jobs in my 20s. But man, like what? Why? Any kids listening to this, if you want to be a writer, be a writer.
I love it. I'm going to mark that as correct, and I'll track down your mother's email address after this, and I'll shoot this over to her just so she can make sure she listens to it.
Well, she'll be devastated, but thanks for that.
Well, I mean, that's part of the charm of the show. Chris, you and I, you went to Cornell, is that right?
Undergrad, yes.
Yes, I went there for law school before I switched careers. So how many NFL players have been drafted out of Cornell? I took this question, by the way. I was not close, just so you know.
I think it's a fair number because they've definitely had some offensive linemen, and they had Ed Marinero, and they had, I would say I'm going to guess 13.
Wow, that's wrong, but it's close. It's 16. I literally guessed 2.
Oh yeah.
So I was way off, but that's an outstanding. It's wrong. I have to mark it wrong, but an outstanding guess.
Thank you.
I love it. What is your favorite city in the world and why? You could say that you've been there. You could have not been there. Whatever you want.
Another one that I just don't have a good answer for. I mean, I'll say it's Los Angeles, and I'll say it's just exclusively because of the weather. As I've aged, I have realized that weather means a lot to me, that I'm much happier when the weather's nice, I haven't been in Massachusetts for a winter in, a long time, 7 or 8 years. And I wish I was in Massachusetts now. I would be, except for we can't, travel.
Yep.
So this is a first summer away from Mass, and no softball and no golf with my friends, and no going to shows and all that stuff that you do out in Amherst, and that's a bummer. But just the good part about it is that the weather here is just always good. So I'll say LA.
Yep, absolutely correct answer. And as somebody who lives in the Arctic tundra of the Northeast, I can tell you that basing basically your ideal city on weather is 100% the way to go.
Yeah.
Because something on the West Coast is certainly where I'd go. Who is the only quarterback drafted 200th or later to reach the Hall of Fame?
Is it Chris Harris? Let's see.
It's not Chris Harris. No theme on this one. This is just a random question.
Who would have been? It would have had to have been a long time ago.
I'll give you the year if you want.
That he was drafted, or that he went to the Hall of Fame?
That he was drafted.
Sure.
1956.
Yeah. Y.A. Tittle.
But you know the name. You know the name, of course, because it's a Hall of Fame player.
Y.A. Tittle.
That is a good guess. It's actually Bart Starr.
Oh.
He was drafted 200th overall.
Oh.
And to be clear, any trivia question I ask, I have taken, and I got one, and it was a completely random question. So I have gotten all of these wrong as well.
Okay.
All right, last one. And unfortunately, all these things now I realize are the worst questions for you, because they're all things like, if you could do one thing, if you could pick one
I can
thing,
try.
I don't think about any of that.
I'm worried that I give a bad answer, but go ahead.
No, there is no bad answer.
Wow.
You've gotten all of yours correct. So whatever. If you could only eat one thing for the rest of your life, so that could be one particular piece of food. It could be a meal from a restaurant.
If I
could be anything you want.
Only one thing.
That's it. Every day. You can drink whatever you want, but that's it. You get one meal, one type of food, however broad you want to do, and that's all you could eat every day. What would it be?
That would be a hard life, man. No, I would not be like. Maybe I should pick like poison.
Man, you can't go that deep, man. Choose beef with broccoli or something. I don't know.
Well, I'm vegetarian. I'm vegetarian, so it wouldn't be.
All
beef.
right. Well, that's fair.
I would say number one, I would say poison, and number two, I would say, if it's like guilt free, I'll take a bowl of cereal.
Yeah.
Like cold cereal. I love cold cereal, man.
Okay. Out of curiosity, do you have a type of cereal? I don't want to go on too long that you would choose, because that's legitimately what I would choose.
Yeah.
Like I would probably choose for me. It's boring, but it's probably Special K, which I pretty much have almost every morning at this point.
Yeah. I eat if I eat cereal, I don't eat too much of it, but if I do eat cereal, it's not the sugary kinds, although I'll maybe put a little honey in it, but I'd say granola.
Yes, granola is a good choice. Yeah, cereal is actually the underrated way to go if you have to eat something every day, because you can get by. I mean, obviously, with poison, you're just going to die, so it won't really matter. But if you manage to survive that first bout of poison, you would at least have cereal to go. So that's good. Look, you did great. You got 6 right. That is tied for the most that anybody has ever gotten right.
Amazing.
On these. So although you felt like they were like a little specific, You did a really good job. Chris, it has been a pleasure to talk to you, to hear about your journey. I think it's really interesting. I think,
Thanks.
again, we've had Brad Evans on, and we've had Mike Wright of the Fantasy Footballers, and Brad kind of stayed with Yahoo until recently, pretty much his entire career.
Right.
And Mike kind of did it entirely solo with the Fantasy Footballers, and you kind of split the baby. So I think it was really a perfect guest to have on for our third show, and your journey is really interesting, and I'm sure people really enjoyed it. Remind everybody, we've talked about it a lot, but remind everybody where they can find more of you and more of your great work.
At Harris Football, if you are on social media, or else if you're not, harrisfootball.com. I have 4 novels, one of which your wife has read, is she done yet?
Loves it. Yeah, she's done.
Okay,
Loved it.
Cool. Thank you. Thank her for me.
I will.
There's 4 of them. They're on Amazon. If you're into audiobooks because you like podcasts, then you can hear my sultry voice reading them, because that's how we recorded them. I did them all in like a Marilyn Monroe voice. I hope that's not weird. It was all like,
yeah, no, I'm sure everybody will love it.
Hours of me talking like Marilyn Monroe, talking about the apocalypse. Yeah, no, it's so harrisfootball.com is where everything is.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Thanks for having me.
I just want to remind everybody before we go about our giveaway, where we're giving away a signed Davante Adams helmet. Again, just leave a review for the show on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. Send a screenshot of that review to gamechangers@fantasypros.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll be back next week.